There's an old saying that goes, never judge a book by its cover. I'm going to create a new saying, never judge an RPG by its title. Let's get into this. Welcome to Solitary RPG. Martin over at Head Cheese Productions sent me a copy of Luchador Hero. This is the solo version of the game. There's actually another version of the game that is meant for traditional RPGs with a GM in a group. I like what Martin did here with this, as he recognized some people are going to want to play solo, so he actually created a whole separate zine just for solo play, and I just appreciate that. That's just a really cool touch. Instead of just bolting on some solo rules on the back end of an RPG, made something separate. I'll start by saying crime fighting games or mystery games are one of the harder games to play solo because you kind of already know some of that information and it's kind of hard to keep it secret. I like what Martin did here with Luchador Hero. Now, this may not be a theme for you. It's definitely not a theme for me. I'm not into wrestling. I'm not into the WWE in America. And this actually is a love letter to old television series back in the 60s and 70s, kind of like Batman 66 or even some of the old Scooby-Doo cartoons, things like that. But they're kind of set up a little bit cheesy television shows where you got wrestlers that go out and fight crime. But you can reskin this game. You can use this game just as a toolbox for playing crime fighting games, solving mysteries and things like that. And Martin created a really cool mechanic. So let's kind of run through some of the basics of this game so you understand the core mechanics of creating a character and how you're going to go about fighting crime. And then think about maybe reskinning this for something that fits more your vibe. Even though this is a game that is a love letter to those older series, you can use this for modern games as well. It's actually kind of designed real nicely if you want to recreate Kick-Ass, that movie with Nicolas Cage and some other actors that I forget. But yeah, you could actually create Kick-Ass and go out and fight crime. So pretty cool stuff. So we can just get into the book. Again, good stuff, what you're going to need. Martin's way of writing rules is really clear, concise, to the point. Doesn't waste a lot of time adding mechanics that aren't necessary. These are very straightforward games. You don't need a lot of stuff. For this game, you're going to need some D6s. You are going to need one that is a different style or different color than the normal D6s that you're going to use, because that's going to be your hero dice, which we'll talk about as we go through it. You're going to need, paper, pencils. There's a character sheet in the back. You can copy off. And you're going to need a handful of like tokens or poker chips, or you could just use like a D20. But these are going to keep track of certain points that you're earning while you're playing. Martin gets into what is a luchador. It's not for everybody. This is basically Mexican wrestling. They wear the whole face mask type thing. It's very popular. I never knew they were TV series. But yeah, so it's a whole TV series, and it's pretty cool. It leans heavily into the cheesier side of old 60s, 70s television shows, but this game is set up to play TV series. This game is not meant for a long campaign. You can advance your character as you play, but each time you play, you're playing like an episode of television where a crime happens, and then the crime solvers go out, collect clues, figure out who did the crime, and then solve it. I like the fact that it leans into Scooby-Doo. You could have a lot of fun with that if you really wanted to. But yeah, that's basically what you're trying to do. Then it jumps into, why play alone? Just some information. Everyone plays solo for different reasons, and just talking a little bit about why someone might want to play solo in case someone has not adventured into playing solo. Then you get into character creation. So you're going to name your character. Martin goes through and creates everything into charts or tables that you can just roll on and let the dice decide who you're going to be and how everything's going to turn out. Or you can just pick or create your own. You're going to give yourself a name, an actual name. So Batman isn't Batman. He has his own name. So you're going to have your real name, and then you're going to create your ring name or your superhero name. So that's kind of a cool thing. And then you're going to give yourself vitality points. Those are going to be your hit points. Once you're at 0 vitality, your episode is over, or you did not solve the crime, and basically you lose. You don't die. You just don't solve the crime. And then you're going to have D3 resolve points. Now, resolve points are one of those things that you're going to give yourself a bonus. So they're like bonuses to your dice rolls. So you can spend one to add a +1 to any dice roll. You can spend them after rolling, so you don't have to decide up front. Ooh, I need to get a bonus on this. Nope. I roll. I missed it by 1. Use a resolve points, but you're not going to regenerate them until the next adventure. They're like a one and done, and you're not going to find a lot of them throughout the game. So there's something that you want to cherish and use when you definitely need to use them. Hero points, a little bit different. Hero points are going to be adding an extra dice to your die roll to give your dice a bump in their value. And one typo for the printed version that I saw was this: the hero point, you start with 1, probably should have been under the heading, and I know an updated PDF was sent out. I don't know if that was fixed in the PDF or not, but you do start with 1. It's just in kind of an odd spot. But yeah, you're going to use that. You can gain more hero points throughout your game, which is really cool, by rolling double 6s. So anytime you roll your dice, if you get 2 6s, that is an extra hero point. And you can spend those, but you can only use 1 hero point per roll. You can't add 4 hero points into a roll and just really crank that roll up. So how do you get to your dice? How do you roll your dice? Well, first, you have 3 stats in this game: muscle, acrobatics, and brains. You get 3 points to distribute amongst them, and you can kind of decide no one of your attributes can go above 3. So if you go back to the character sheet, you fill in the dots. You can only have up to 3 in any one of these categories. Each dot on the character sheet represents a dice. So if you want to be the muscle guy, maybe give yourself 2 in muscle and maybe 1 in acrobatics, but not be the smartest cookie in the character lineup. Or you can just distribute 1 in each, however you feel you want to do it. You will get maybe a bonus in one of these by choosing your archetype. So these are just different types of characters you can be that give you a little bit of a bonus in maybe one of your categories, or give you access to other abilities such as psychic powers or mutations. And this, you can also lean into this as kind of how you design your character. So that's pretty cool. So that's how you build your dice pool. These are the psychic powers and mutation powers from choosing one of your archetypes. And these, again, just giving you those additional bonuses to gameplay, just making everyone a little bit more unique. Over here under mutations, you got thick hides. So if you really wanted to play a game of kick-ass, you could, because that's basically what he was. So you give yourself the mutation, you give yourself thick hide, maybe make yourself a little bit stronger. Not as acrobatic, though. You got to be kind of klutzy. And you could play kick-ass. You can, maybe he doesn't meet up with Nicolas Cage and his daughter, and he just goes about his day. You could have some fun with that. You're going to have a headquarters. You need a starting point for your game. Batman had his cave, Spider-Man had his room. I don't know where our luchadors had. Maybe they had the gym. Maybe they, different places like that. But yeah, I like this one, in the basement of a seedy cinema. You can change cinema for anything, but it's just kind of a seedy place. Kind of like it could be a seedy bar, could be a seedy comic book shop. I don't know. You could have some fun just changing some of the concepts here. Secret lair in the sewer could just be a cave. You could have some fun with it. Public access television station. You could be, maybe you work for WKRP in Cincinnati. So anyways, you can have some fun with that. You're going to have some assets. Everyone needs something to help them with their gameplay. So you would just either roll or pick. Allies are important. So, superheroes have their allies to help them, get information and things like that. So you're going to start your game with one ally, but you may add additional allies as you play. You might run into other people. You might have to roll on this again. So if you do get duplicates, you just roll again. But you can interrogate allies. You can get information from them and find clues from them. So that's a good thing. And then hero drive. So why are you a superhero? Again, everything, the trope stuff is here. Vengeance, justice, protect someone, protect the city, never be bullied again, fame and glory. So you can play kind of trope superhero concepts that we're familiar with. But now you want to give yourself a special move. These are more leaning towards the wrestling type of moves, but you can rename these anything you want and have a little bit more theme or immersion for your game. I do like the spine buster. I just imagine in my head is that you pick somebody up with your hands, with their, from their back, and you drop to a knee and you just break their spine over your knee. And that's why it's called the spine buster. And next thing you know, they got back problems for the rest of their lives and they can't be criminals. So, yeah, so you got some cool stuff here you can lead into. And now we just get into the mechanics of the game where you're going to make skill checks. Pretty straightforward. So you're going to figure out which one of the 3 attributes you're going to use. You're going to roll those dice plus 1 additional dice. So pretty much you always start with 1d6, and this is just a d6 system. And then you take your attribute, however many bubbles you got filled in, you add those d6s to it. And then what you're doing is looking at this chart here. So you take the highest dice you rolled, and if you rolled snake eyes, you fail. You roll 3 or 4, you succeed, but there's a consequence. I like this. Not everything goes smoothly. If you get the 5, 6, you succeed. And if you obtain double 6, you gain an extra hero point. The way a hero point is used when rolling your dice is this is where you use that different colored d6. You roll that with you, and the value rolled on that gets added to your highest valued dice. So it's like a bonus to the roll. Really cool stuff. Talk here a little bit about, what does it mean to take a consequence? And maybe depending on what you're doing, maybe one of your assets break, maybe something goes wrong with one of your allies, maybe they get kidnapped, maybe they just go away, or you lose a vitality point, whatever. There's some different things here. We're pretty familiar with creating consequences as solo players. So we have advantage, disadvantage. This is pretty straightforward stuff. With advantage, you're adding another d6 to your dice pool. Disadvantage, you're taking a d6 out. That is going to come in a lot when you're playing this game, especially the disadvantage part. Combat's a little bit different, but the same. All you're doing differently with combat, though, is all the enemies will have a DR range. And what you do with combat is we take our d6s. So let's say I have 1 bubble in muscle and I get my standard d6. So every roll starts with a d6, and then you add your bonuses to that, the number of dice to build your dice pool. You roll your d6s, whatever dice rolls the highest. If it goes over the DR rating of the enemy that you're fighting, you win. And the difference between the DR rating and the dice that you rolled will cause damage, taking vitality points away from the enemies. That's pretty much it. If you roll under, then the monster wins the fight, or the encounter wins the fight, and the difference going under. So the monster had a DR rating of 4, I rolled a 2, now I'm going to take 2 points of damage. Pretty straightforward stuff, not getting too lost in all the different components, but that's where those hero dice come in handy when you start playing your, getting into combat, especially when you get to the big encounter at the end, because the DR rating ramps up, obviously, for the bigger encounters. So you want to make sure you have your bonuses. So that's kind of what you're doing as you're playing your game, is you're trying to build up your dice pools. So that way, when you have your big encounter at the end, you're all ready, ramped up and ready to go. If you both tie, you both take 1 damage. Everything's covered here. If you're fighting multiple enemies, so if you go to a location, you have 2 enemies, then you're always fighting with disadvantage. So that's to represent having to fight the two different enemies, which could be a problem. So you may want to flee. So there's some rules here for fleeing. You're going to roll a d6, and basically if you go to 1 through 4, you escape, but you're going to take 1 point of damage. 5 or 6, you escape without consequences, which is really cool. Then we got healing. So we have all the components of a role-playing game built into this small little zine-style game. We do have healing, so there's 2 types of healing. You can do a quick heal, so if you go to a location and you're going to do some resting, you're going to restore 3 vitality points. If you decide to go back to your headquarters to fully rest up, that basically ends your episode. You're done. That's basically saying I'm done, I can't do it, and then you got to restart over again. So here Martin really gets into breaking down the concept behind this game, and this is why I think this game is cool, because it's leaning into the TV series. So, you know, the 1 hour episodes of a crime fighting adventure. You could just be a cop in this game. You can just make this up to be a cop. Maybe your superpowers are toned down quite a bit, but you could just play a cop movie with this, the way it's set up, like a Law and Order episode. But yeah, it's talking about what an episode is, what the different scenes are. You're going to have your intro scene, you're going to have your investigation scenes, and then you're going to have your final showdown, just like a TV series. It just gives you all that detail. I really like it. You're going to start the game by choosing or rolling for one of these rumors. This is what's going to spark the adventure, and it's going to get you started in your game. This is where Martin kind of cuts out a lot of the non-essential stuff. What you're going to do is to start going from location to location to location, encountering enemies, collecting clues, and performing tasks, and then get yourself up to the final big boss. You decide how many of these things you go through. So you're definitely going to start out with your main one. You can modify these however it fits your story, or just make up one on your own and just go. But these are going to get you started. In your intro scene, you're going to come into contact with one enemy. You're going to have to perform one task, and you can search for one clue. And that's for your intro scene. But then after you're done with your intro scene, you start going to investigation locations. And you have this chart here that you can roll on, or you can make up your own. But each one of these different locations will tell you what you come into contact with. Every one of them is going to give you an opportunity to roll for a clue. But before you can roll for your clue, you need to take out the enemies, complete the task, and then you can roll your clue. So you got to go in order on how they're listed here, which is a lot of fun. And if you go over here, here are your enemies. These are the ones that are leaning into the game system. So they have that luchador vibe to them, but you can change them, but it tells you everything that they are. They got difficulty rating, their DR rating, and their vitality points. So this Cactus Goblin, DR2, VP2. You could take one of them out immediately. And then it just starts ramping up. But the highest you get here is going to be a DR5 and a VP, vitality points of 5. And that's going to be the Slime Lord. So, again, you can change all these up, or you can just use them as they are and just create those characters as you go. So first thing you have to take out are the enemies, and then you got to roll for your task. Here's a bunch of your tasks that you can do. Some of these tasks might not fit the scene that you're quite at, so you might have to ad-lib a little bit to make it work, because if you go to a certain location, maybe your task won't fit at that location, so you just kind of weave it into the story, which is what RPG is all about. But that's, you just kind of roll. It just gives you, like, what do you got to do? You got to do a brain check with advantage. Brain checks. Most of these are going to be brain checks, but here's an acrobatics check because you're chasing a suspect. Things like that. So you just roll for your task. So if the location you go to only has one task, you do one. If you got two, you do two. And you just roll on this chart, pick them, or just pick them if it fits your narrative. You get some modifications to the rules, which is always fun. These just create complications. So if you just want to add a little bit more narrative, because maybe you're rolling the same thing, maybe then take and add something more to it. Make it a little bit more complicated. Now, this is just a really nice feature to have in that solo game. So, because you don't have the GM to lean on, so this kind of emulates that GM, just adding some spice to the game. Then once you've finished you've taken out the enemies, and again, taking out doesn't mean you're killing them, you're just knocking them out. This is a TV series, so 60s, 70s, that violence wasn't there, so you're good to go. You can interrogate them, do things like that. But you finished the enemies, you did the task, now you search for clues. And as you collect clues, because that is the biggest thing, because those are going to start being points. You're going to start adding those up as you go. Then when you face the final scene, the big baddie, you can actually do your power move. This is where that special move during character creation that we created, you get to take all your clue points and use those as an automatic success in doing damage to the final baddie, because the final baddies are going to be vitality 10 and they're going to have a difficulty rating of 6. They are meant to be hard. So boom, you're going to take out your final baddie. So that's that. So that's why you want to collect those clue points. And here are the investigation checks that you can roll. Basically saying, how are you collecting those clues? You roll here and it kind of tells you what you're going to do. Again, you weave these into your story and you're basically doing brains checks. So obviously brain checks are going to be something you do on a regular basis. So that might be one of those places where you want to make sure you have some bubbles in your character creation, so that way you can definitely get some advantages in there. And that might be also where you want to use your hero points to make sure you get the successes, so you're collecting your clues. It's kind of how this game is set up. The one thing that will happen that as you're going through this is when you fail a task, that ends your scene. So you enter a scene, you have your enemies. You take out your enemies, you go to do your task, you fail your task, that ends that scene, you move on to the next scene. So you would just go to your next location, because you would find something to lead you to that location, to your next location, but you can't search for clues. So just want to be careful. Make sure you have your bubbles and your points to give you those advantages. So when you're rolling, you're accomplishing your task and you're doing the things that you need to do. And then you fight your big baddie. Here are a list of big baddies you can just choose from, or just roll a d6. They're not numbered, but I think we can all handle a d6 roll and not have to have them numbered for us. The one baddie that when I was reading this immediately went to my head, and I put together an adventure and just kind of had some fun with it, was the burger spawn. When I read that, I was like, first thing, as the Hamburglar, I went Ronald McDonald. Someone stole the golden arches, and Ronald was depressed and needed them back. So my superhero went out and saved him. I was just a friend of Ronald McDonald, and I just had a lot of fun with it because McDonald's used to, back in the day, lean heavily into their cartoon characters. Don't see it as much today anymore. But it was a lot of fun just to kind of run around McDonald land and play as a friend of Ronald's and trying to solve a crime. It was just neat. Post-credit scene, you're basically going to do a little write-up. This is kind of how the moral of your adventure, like sometimes those old television shows from the 60s and 70s were more educational, trying to teach people a lesson. And you're going to kind of write up your post-credit scene. And then if you want to continue using your same character and go again, you can advance them, but just realize your character has limitations on how much they can grow. You can only get up to 3 in any one of your attributes, and that's pretty much it. And then the character sheet's laid out good. This is the failed scene. So when you fail those scenes, you fill in these boxes. When you get 4, that ends your episode. But then you have all the other spots for keeping track of your numbers. If you want, you can just use dice and poker chips in these little boxes, or you can just write. It's up to you. But you do have a progression track. Adjusting your difficulty. So this is something Martin did in another game that I reviewed of his. If the game, you find it just too easy or not hard enough, whatever, or too hard, you can adjust accordingly and kind of go from there. Clear index of where everything's at if you need it. But Martin doesn't make his books hard to follow. Everything just flows nicely when he writes his rules. You know, you're going to start with your character creation. You're going to go into your game, and you got everything you need to play. But he does include a nice index, which is awesome. And then all the special acknowledgments that are from the people that helped create this game, which is awesome. And then a little advertisement for Head Cheese Productions. So when I started this video, old proverb of don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge this game by Luchador Hero, the idea of Mexican wrestling. If that's something that you're not into, I understand. I'm not into it. But crime fighting, solving a crime, I do think that this game is a great toolbox for that. And you can have a lot of fun with it if you desire. It's got a simple mechanic for just going to different locations, resolving tasks at those locations, collecting clues, and then those clues are going to lead you to the final bad person or the final encounter, and you're going to use those clues to help defeat that final encounter. I think it's a cool mechanic for that because I already know the crime. I already know so much because I'm playing solo. I'm just going to roll on the chart for the baddie at the end, and then I'm going to defeat them in combat. Just that simple. Awesome little zine if you're looking for something to do that's not going to be hard and complicated. Very quick to the point. Like Martin's games are really cool to take on the go if you're traveling or doing something like that, because you don't need a lot of components. You just need a character sheet, pencil with an eraser, some dice, some tokens for this game, and you're good to go. You can play it on an airplane. So good stuff. Martin, thank you very much for thinking of me and sending this review copy to me. Everybody have a great day. Thank you for watching, and take care. Bye.